Good afternoon. We are the team number 1 and we are going to present the chapter number 6 is broadcast media. The team is integrated by Alondra de Jesus Victorio and Carlos Ariel Urrea Ramirez. Now the first point that we are going to explain is the main idea of the whole chapter. First, we're going to go through the introduction. The broadcast media, the radio and the television are so involved in the language nowadays. We have many genres in common, that is the news, the current, the affairs, the art reviews and the entertainment programs. And these also have like shows, games, and all this is so involved with the language and also with the learning language. And these are sources that we can use to teach a new language, such the English. Now the next one is the 6.1, the television, using entertainment media for learning. Here we have what is the use for in the entertainment media in learning. The teacher needs to be aware that in user television for language learning is today probably the most familiar the television, because everyone has a television in house and most of the people have television in house, and they can use it, they can watch movies, programs, news in English. And the learners are associated with television strongly, with most for domestic and not that for pedagogical setting. More problematic still, they identify television with passivity and entertainment. Most of the students can or will use the television just like a game and not for learning. That's one of the problems of the television. The next one is the snippet length. This is very short and easy. Is the use of television and radio in the language classroom, and both present the same dilemma through the opposite reason, and this is the problem that is more common. In both cases, the usual solution for language classroom is to restrict snippet length. However, this can be create as many problems as it solves, because it removes context that is very important also. The next one is the television and culture. Television and culture are very related. What makes a television such a valuable resource for learning about culture is it is universal medium. When a student is watching a TV and he or she is watching a movie, is cultural learning. They know about the popular worlds and how are the English conversations going through the language, and there are words that they can use every day. Now the point number 3 is television and currency. This is about the variety of genres and registers in the language of television and radio has been pointed out. And this is interesting because it's about some of these genres and discourse types is that they are unique to broadcasting. And also this news interviewing is superficially a dialogue. However, it is a dialogue that differs crucially from spontaneous. So these are words that they can memorize and be helpful for them. And the last one from the 6.3 is the language of television. As we know, language in television is very different, and most of that language can be useful for the students, because this is interesting about some genders, and television touch some language that can be interesting for the students and what they need to learn.
Okay, so the next topic that we are going to talk about, as we can see here, 6.4, is the challenge of television. What the author mentions right here is that linguistic complexity is not necessarily the main criterion for the selection of text for language learning. Actually, we're not actually using like text right here. So this is particularly true of television material where the message is doubly supported, coming via both linguistic and visual channels. This is actually a good reason why television is a good source of learning, because we are daily watching like news and other stuff that makes us get some information and vocabulary, and we can use like the grammar right there. I I heard that for example for us that we're living in Tijuana, or particularly in California and Baja California, we we must use like the West Coast accent, and usually watching news in English like in that region will make us like get into that accent, and it's actually very good. But sometimes, as we managed earlier, there are a lot of other genres that may get us confused. So we have to make sure what kind of genres of television are we watching, so our learning of the language will be better. Okay, so now moving on from television, let's talk about radio. As with its usurper, the role of radio in learners' everyday lives affects its use in the language learning classroom. Actually, this is for me this is a better way to learn a language, because you're like listening to it, and you're just listening, and like you manage more like the pronunciation and other things that the people on radio speak. Today, this role has drifted towards the background in the home or distraction, like for example when we are driving in the car and we're listening to radio. But listening to the radio, in other words, is usually done in tandem with other activity. So that is, it is rarely listened to for a sustained period of time. It is heard. This means we don't pay like too much attention when we are listening to the radio, and this is kind of bad for learners. But anyways, these days much of our listening to the radio is listening for Geist. What does that mean? Like we are looking for specific information that help us improve in our vocabulary, in our grammar, in a certain show program, and actually that might help us. So now we have like the summary and principles of this chapter, and it says the author that the broadcast media, in conclusion, have huge potential for language and culture learning. As part of the so-called mass media, broadcasting is wholly familiar to learners from all cultures, and this very familiarity can be usefully exploited in their learning environment through the comparisons and contrasts that invokes. And finally, we have some points right here, which are the principles of the use of broadcast media for language learning. We have here counter passivity by listening or viewing with a purpose, requiring interactivity or creating an information gap. Exploit original program editing to determine excerpt length. Then exploit the universality of broadcast genres, build on learners' knowledge of them for the study of both language and culture. View or listen in the ways that are authentic to the medium and its genres, in example for guides or for specific information. And in the case of television, exploit the visual complement of television, an example nonverbal communication, action, wordless sequences, the printed word on screen, and exploit all the multimedia features on the television, audio, visual, and website. And that's all for this chapter. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like it, make sure you gave a big like, subscribe to our channel, and with all that being said, we'll see you guys next time.